thoughts. Paper is way better than a computer for this. Whiteboard is fine. Lipstick on a mirror. Don't do the blood on the wall. That's creepy. But whatever your format is, it shouldn't be on a computer. Of course, now I've done it on a computer because I had to publish it somewhere. But take a look at how I built this. I drew that. Let me show you what I drew. Okay, what you see in there?
The IDs?
Oh, see, you're already doing it.
You need the story first, don't you? So you can pull out
Very nice, very nice, very nice. Yeah, this is actually the second part. But here's the interesting thing. You already, guys, you went into details. Now, the first thing I would do here, honestly, is I would draw my story or write it in a word processor or something. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. And then I'd find the words I want to take out. And I'd take Jack, and I'd cross it out, and I'd put boy name. I'd take Jill out of there and put girl name. Or whatever. So take anything you want, right? And the first thing we're going to do is identify what our data structure is. Programming is not about programming. Programming is about data. It's about understanding your data. That's the number one thing first. Let's know what data we're really talking about. So from that, then you could write a list of the words you need. I need a boy's name, a girl's name, a geologic formation, and so on, right? From that, you could make a diagram of roughly how these things are going to work. Let's list these things, and I think, oh, text boxes would be great. But I'm not caring too much about details yet, am I? Did I say anything on that document about how things are laid out, what size they are, what the background colors are? No, no. Why? Not relevant yet. I do put in the names of the text boxes. Why do I do that? There's two good reasons. One, on a drawing, you can't tell what's a text box and what's just a box, right? So by giving it a name, TXT, boy name, or whatever, I've indicated to myself, one day that will be a text box. That's a good thing, right? The other good thing is, before I write a line of code, I want to identify what all my variables are going to be. I want to understand my data structure. If I understand that before I start writing code, how much better is my code going to turn out? Yeah. So I can do that. Almost as a side effect, I'm getting a good sense of the layout. But how much do I care about that right now? It's important. We know how to do it. If you really struggle with that, I'll give you some code. But you all right. And then I've got a button here. I made that a different color so I could tell it was a button. But then every time I have a button, here's the bad thing about buttons. Those darn users, they want to click on it. So every time you draw a button, what else do you need to do? Well, this is where your code's going to come in, right? So we need to explain to ourselves what we should do. At a minimum, it should call a tell story function. So I already know what function I'm going to need. Would you agree? And what I haven't said here very clearly is what that function should do. Tell me what the function should do.
concatenate all your.
It prints your story to the screen.
Can't do that until it knows the story.
You should look for each of those IDs to put them together into.
Get the variables. Get the variables, build the story, output the story. How much technical coding terms did I use there? Variable, I guess, is sort of a technical term. Okay, I could just say get the information. See, the very first step is you explain what you want to do in a way that your grandma will understand, unless your grandma is an elite coder and can pick someone else. English. English. The first thing I write when I write a function is the comments. So if I even do turn that into code, it's going to be comments. Now I take each of these comments and I break them down so small that I look at each one and I say, I can do that in code. Does that make sense? In fact, this one I might say, get the boy's name, put that in a variable. Get the girl's name, put it in a variable. Get whatever. I might make comments for all of us. Now some of you have programmed before, right? So you know how comments work. Why do we write comments in code? This is so much more fun when I do it with experienced programmers because they all get it wrong.
I know what I'm doing.
To explain so that you know what you're doing. So you explain what your code is to other programmers and yourself.
Or reminding myself.
You're reminding yourself what you just did. Okay. That's what most people think. And that's why nobody ever writes comments properly. Because, see, if what you think is that the comments are there to explain the code to programmers, which is what most people would argue it is. I think a lot of programming books will say that. Comments are there to explain the code to programmers. Well, this is why you're not going to write it. First of all, you might not actually be certain why it's working, or if it is. You're certainly not going to commit by writing a comment. Plus, I'm not going to explain how it works until I'm sure it is working, so that's got to be the very last step. And by the time that it's working, I'm probably already late. I don't have time to put comments in at the end. That's stupid. Nobody will read this. Nobody's going to read my code but me. Maybe Andy will, but he loves me. True. That's why comments are so atrocious. The assumption typically is that comments are there to explain the code to programmers, and honestly, programmers won't care. So if that's what they're for, of course they're not important. Here's my most profound thing I've ever taught, at least in this context. I don't think comments are there to explain the code to programmers. I think the code is there to explain the comments to the computer. The code is there to explain the comments to the computer. And if you look at it that way, which one's optional? The code. And I'll back this up. I've done it. I tell my other students, look, if you get lost and you write a program and your comments are glorious, but you don't have a line of code, I'll give you a passing grade. If you have good enough comments that I know you really understand the process, I'll give you a passing grade. It certainly won't be an A, but I'll pass you without a single line of code. That seems really bold. But how often have I had to actually follow through on that? Only once in 20 plus years. And the reason is this. Most of the time, if people write the comments that well, the code's a snap. When you can't write code, I know your hand's going to shoot up the moment you don't know what to do. And what you're going to tell me is, I don't know the command I need. That might or might not be true, probably isn't. I've given you every command you need. What you're really probably meaning is, I don't know what I'm trying to do here. Don't figure out how to do it until you know what it is you want to do. And how do you know what you want to do? You write it in comments. And almost every time, when a person writes comments that are so precise that each comment can be turned into a line or two of code, they can write the code. That's why I've never had to do that, except one time, this one guy decided he was going to work with this very bright 9-year-old who wasn't quite as bright as he thought. 9-year-old destroyed the server the night before the project was due. And I just thought that was beautiful. But the guy said, here's all my documentation. I documented this to the nth degree on paper, so even though my server is dead, here's all my documentation. If you give me another day or two, I can rewrite it. I looked at his documentation. Yeah, I know you can rewrite it. Good, we're fine. I'll give you a B- if you want to rewrite it. Go ahead. That's the goal. Does that make sense? That's the goal. So we decide what it is we want to do when we first start writing code. We do it this way. For this project you're going to do, let's take a look at the specifics. And again, you have some flexibility. Do what works for you while trying to solve the problem. Okay, so you're welcome to use all the examples I gave you as a starting place, but if you just copy and paste and change a few names to protect the innocent, you probably haven't learned anything. So try to do it yourself, but of course fall back if you're missing details, that's fine. But try to do it yourself because that's how you're going to learn best, yeah? You're welcome to make it separate files or one, whatever works out for you. Plan your thing out on paper, whiteboard, word processor, make some placeholders. For this case, if you can do 4 or 5 inputs, could you do 20? Yeah, so let's just make it 4 or 5 for now, and then if you want to extend it and make it more funny later, cool. I'm also going to suggest for this point, just use text inputs. Don't go crazy on your inputs, just to make your life easier. Sound good? So we won't use anything but text inputs. Add a regular button. Make sure you specify button type as button. If you forget the button type as button, you will get weird behavior. If you just say button, you're not going to get what you want. Make sure you specify button type as button. How do I know that? When I did this exercise last night, I forgot that part. And it was like, I am too stupid to teach this class. It took me 20 minutes to figure out what idiot thing I'd forgotten to do. And I'm a teacher. So, hear that? You're going to write some kind of JavaScript function that's going to happen when the button gets clicked. You're going to create variables for each of these things. You're going to use the getElementById to get the values of those variables. You're going to build a big old string for output. If you want to, you can set the output to a string, and then you could say, here's a good way to add stuff to a string. This could be kind of fun for you. If you have a string called output, let's say I have a string called output and it contains the value high. I can do this little shortcut. I could do this first. Output gets output plus there. Or I could do this, does the same thing. And that is output plus equals. That means the same thing as just add to the end there. So at the end, this will say hi there. That's just a handy thing that might be helpful for creating your output. And then you just print your output to some form element you've created or some div you've created for output. Can you do this? Not yet. You've got to do it once. I've watched a lot of NBA. I still can't hit a three-pointer. I've got to practice. So let's do it. I'll help you. You got this. Okay, have some fun. Of course, feel free to work together. In fact, if 2 of you want to turn in one project, that's cool with me too. Especially if you're feeling a little nervous. So if you want to work together, great. Just make sure that you both understand what's happening. Okay, we need to get you on the Python anywhere, or did you already do it?
We did not do it.
Okay.
I can remember the settings of the image.
Yeah, it's a little funky, and you don't really need to memorize that. So, yeah. Excellent. Now, we're not really using Python next, but if you come back for the next session, I'm just going to do some magic for you. Is this you? That's the person who sat there yesterday. So let's sign you up for a new account. Well, I wouldn't worry about it. All right, super. I'm just gonna do, is it okay if I just take over for a second and do some magic? Because this was designed for for teaching Python programming, that's what you got here. But we're also gonna subvert it to web development.
Yeah, I was looking at this too, but I was like, no, I know. This one's
Right there.
Yeah.